Hello, viewers. Welcome to Literary Concepts. Today's topic is tragedy. Now, let us learn about the tragedy. The definition of tragedy is a genre of literature. So, it is one kind of uh, genre in literature. It explores. So, in tragedy, we find human sufferings, evoking emotions of pity, fear, and catharsis in the audience. So we find the human problems, human sufferings, and evoking emotions. So that is raising emotions of pity, feeling very sadness, fear about our fears, and catharsis. So that is the act of releasing our strong emotions in the audience. It often deals with the downfall of main character. Here in tragedy, what do we find? We find that the downfall of means the failure or the fall of main character, who is typically a person of high status or great potential. So that main character is he belongs to the high status, high rank, and great potential, having great abilities and capabilities. So brought down by a fatal flaw that is called hamartia. Fatal flaw means fate related mistake. Flaw means mistake. So that is weakness. Flaw means weakness. That the fatal flaw means fate related weakness or fate related uh, mistake. So which is called as hamartia or fate, the destiny, or both, the combination of both the fatal flaw or the fate. Understand? Tragedy is characterized by serious themes. In tragedy, so we find that serious themes and a somber tone, very sad and serious kind of tone, a focus on darker aspects of human existence. So it's always focus on some gloomy aspects. Okay, the negative shades kind of human experiences. So these are the things which we find in tragedy. Now, let us try to understand the features or the characteristics of tragedy. The first characteristic, the first feature is tragic hero. So, the tragic hero is the central character, often noble or high ranking person who possesses a tragic flaw. So, that is such as hubris, ambition, or jealousy. So the tragic hero means the central character is very very important. That is a protagonist is very important who belongs to noble high rank. Okay, noble person who possesses who is having a tragic flaw, a tragedy related some mistake, such as for example hubris means having exaggerated pride or a great self confidence, understand, and ambition, having some aim to achieve, or feeling jealous. These kind of weaknesses that the central character have, okay, uh, will have, that leads to their downfall, that central character. So all these hubris, ambition, or jealousy. So that tragic flaw that leads to their downfall, that leads to the fall or the failure. Understand? So that is the first feature. The second one is hamartia. The second feature of a tragedy is hamartia, which is also called tragic flaw. So the protagonist means the central character is inherent having a natural defect. So that is a defect that is also called a weakness or a mistake that triggers the tragic event. So that strikes, that starts, that leads the tragic events. So the second feature of tragedy is having hamartia, that is tragic flaw. Then the third feature is catharsis. So catharsis means the purging of emotions, especially pity, that is sad, and fear, experienced by the audience through the unfolding of the tragic event. So purging means so purification. You are free of emotions, whatever that pity, the sadness, the fear you felt. So you are just coming out. You are just uh, cleans. Understand your emotions and. Through unfolding of the tragic events. Through that unfolding means revealing. Okay, so revealing the tragic events, how the tragic events happened, the understanding that you outburst. Okay, you just burst out your feelings. You will be purified from those feelings. That is what is catharsis. And then the fourth one is fate and destiny. So these fate and destiny often the protagonist fate, the central character fate is sealed by means a circumstance. Okay, sealed, covered by the circumstances, the situations, understand, which are beyond their control, such as fate, destiny, or the gods. Okay, the fate and destiny of the central character is controlled by the gods, or it is a predestined, predecided one. Understand? So that is the fourth feature. Fate and destiny is the fourth feature of tragedy. You find. Then the fifth one is conflict. So conflict, that is problems, understanding issues, difficult situations. Tragedies are marked by intense internal and external conflicts. Inner, the protagonist related inner conflicts, and external, the outer side. Okay, the outer happenings. So, internal and external conflicts, often involving moral dilemmas or struggles with powerful forces. Example, the powerful forces, that is society or fate or divine interventions. Understand? So, the central character often having a moral dilemmas. Okay, moral dilemmas you find, and then the struggles, the problems he has to face with society and fate and divine god. Okay, god's interference. Understand? That is the fifth feature of conflict is the fifth feature of tragedy. Then the sixth one is reversal and recognition. That is peripetia and anagnosis. Remember, this peripetia and anagnosis are very very important from for the point of UGC net preparation. So remember a turning point where the protagonist fortunes change from good to bad. That is what is called peripetia. So, in protagonist life, the protagonist fate, the future, so that will be changed from good character to bad character. So that turning point, understand, from good to bad is called as peripetia, so that is reversal, understand, and followed by a moment of realization or recognition of their own flaw. So after peripetia, then at last you see that realization and recognition of their own mistakes. Flaw means mistakes. So that is what is called a realization of his or her own mistake. The protagonist's mistake is nothing but anagnosis. Remember these 2 points, very important from the point of UGC net examination. Now, and the next one is inevitable downfall. The next feature is inevitable, unavoidable downfall. The tragic hero's downfall is inevitable. You can't escape. So definitely, you find that sudden fall, the ruin of the life, the downfall of the life of the protagonist in tragedy, leading to a catastrophic, a terrible disaster, catastrophic conclusion, a terrible calamity, or maybe a terrible tragedy, understand, usually involving either death or destruction, understand, completely ruined, complete loss you find. So that is the protagonist inevitable downfall which we find in tragedy. Then the next feature is the somber and serious tone. The tragedy is always okay. The language of the tragedy is always somber, that is sad and seriousness. The language and themes of tragedy are typically serious and reflective, understand, so always thoughtful, often dealing with the fundamental, very basic human issues. So in tragedy you find very basic human issues like life, death, fate, and moral integrity, that is moral character, moral virtue, understand. So these are the features of tragedy. Now let us try to understand the types of tragedy. The first one is classic tragedy. So the classic tragedy rooted, okay, means it started, derived from ancient Greek drama. So belongs to ancient Greek drama. Classics, classical tragedy classical tragedy is structured around, means it is organized around unities of time, place, and action. So classical tragedy, they follow unity of time, place, and action, with the tragic hero's downfall caused by a fatal flaw and will of God. So the protagonist, the tragic hero, so his downfall you will find in classical tragedy, and that was caused by fatal flaw, the fateful mistake. Understand, the weakness, the fate related weakness, flaw means weakness, and that is the will of gods. So you find that intervention of or interference of gods in the downfall of tragic hero. Okay, example, for example, of classic tragedy, Sophocles, very popular Greek dramatist, Sophocles, Oedipus Rex, and Antigone. So very very popular dramas. These two popular tragedies, Oedipus Rex and Antigone. The second type of tragedy is Elizabethan tragedy, popularized by playwrights like William Shakespeare. Okay, so Elizabethan tragedy, so popularized by William Shakespeare. Elizabethan tragedies focus on complex character, very very complicated character, and psychological conflicts, the mental situations, and human flaws. So human weaknesses, human mistakes. So these three aspects uh, we find in Elizabethan tragedy, they do not strictly adhere to the classical unities, just like how the classical unities, okay, classical tragedies, how they follow the time, place, and action. But in Elizabethan tragedy, you don't find the following of classical unities of time, place, and action. The example of Elizabethan tragedy is Shakespeare's Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello. Understand? These are the examples of Elizabethan tragedy. King Lear also. Next type of tragedy is revenge tragedy. So this is a subgenre in the tragedy, and that centers. Okay, it focuses mainly on the theme of revenge. So that is vengeance. Understand? So often includes elements of murder, ghosts, and supernatural. So in the revenge tragedy, we find the elements, okay, the components of murder, ghosts, involving ghosts, and the supernatural, okay, the supernatural powers. It typically features a cycle of bloody revenge. Okay, so it is a kind of bloody. You see a lot of bloodshed in this. Okay, the revenge tragedy, bloody revenge. Example of this kind of tragedy is Thomas Keats, the Spanish tragedy, and Shakespeare's Hamlet. So these are the examples of revenge tragedy. The next one is domestic tragedy. So in the domestic tragedy, it focuses on the downfall of ordinary people rather than noble heroes. Ordinary, common men, okay, common people. The downfall, the downfall of common people, the ruin of common people, and it deals with middle class or lower class protagonists. The central character belongs to middle class or lower class people facing personal and social issues. That protagonist faces personal issues or society related issues. Example of domestic tragedy is George Lillo's The London Merchant. George Lillo's The London Merchant is an example of domestic tragedy. Then the next type is modern tragedy. Modern tragedy breaks away from classical conventions, so it is completely different from classical, okay, conventions, the traditions, and explores contemporary themes, the contemporary, the present, okay, happenings, often focusing on ordinary individuals, very common individuals facing existential crisis, their existence related matters and moral conflicts, the virtue related issues and societal pressures, the pressure of, okay, the pressure which we feel because of society, the societal pressures. Example of modern tragedy are Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, Tennessee Williams, A Streetcar Named Desire. A Streetcar Named Desire. These are the examples of modern tragedy. The next one is tragic comedy. So it blends both, means it mixes both the elements of both tragedy and comedy. So you find both these elements. So it includes tragedy, at the same time comedy, presenting serious themes with a humorous undertone. Understand? So certain serious topics are discussed with humorous undertone or vice versa. Understand? So that is, you find a kind of fun incidents which are not obvious, okay, which are in the underlying meaning. Understand? So, for example, of tragic comedy, Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice is example of tragicomedy. So now let us try to look at some of the popular examples of tragedy. As I mentioned it, Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, a classic Greek tragedy that is. So Sophocles' Oedipus Rex is example, a very very important one related to tragedy, very popular tragedy, and William Shakespeare's Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and King Lear. The four tragedies are very, very popular and very famous, and everyone must read these four tragedies. And Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, John Webster's The Dutch of Malfi, Arthur Miller, Death of Salesman, etc. These are some of the popular examples, popular tragedies which we find in English literature. I hope you understood the concept of tragedy, and it will be helpful for your preparation.